Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Arsh Ellahi. I'd like to thank you all for being with us this evening. I'm going to introduce you to a friend and business partner of mine in a short while to the name of Neil McCoy-Ward. Neil, are you online?
Hi Ash, yeah I am. Good evening ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, right, fantastic. Okay, so it's looking like it's going to be a very, very busy webinar tonight. So, we're going to be sharing a lot of knowledge and about lots of different strategies tonight. And the reason why tonight is so important is because we're at the start of a brand new year. So everyone set their resolutions, everyone set their goals, their targets, or what they want to achieve. Now, I've been doing this for a number of years now. I know that this week is the most important week of anyone in property because everyone goes out full guns blow, full rear, actually going straight for it, going and hitting 2006 if the ground's running. So what I want to do before we move any further, I want to make sure that we've got everyone on board, but more importantly, you can hear us loud and clearly. So on your screen, you should have a box, hopefully on the right-hand side of your screen or the left-hand side of your screen, somewhere on your screen. And if you can put in there just like a hello or a hi, yes, you can hear us loud and clear. It allows us to just make sure that we can, yeah, okay, so everyone's going, yep, can hear us. Okay, fantastic, yep. Wow, okay, Neil, yeah, it's looking very busy. Everyone can hear us loudly and clearly, so let's move on. We're going to try and keep it to 2 hours. 2 hours is a long time, so by all means, if you need to get yourself refreshments, the one thing I want you to do is take a lot of notes, so make sure you've got pen and pad very close by, and make sure that you keep yourself hydrated. So we're going to be giving out a lot of information tonight. So for those that don't know, just a little bit about me. My name's Arsh Ellahi. I run a group of 12 property companies with my brother and business partner, Aki Ellahi. Together we're landlords and letting agents, as well as run a group of other companies, all property related. We've been letting property since 1973, which technically speaking isn't correct because I wasn't born until 1980, but there's a story behind that, and I'll tell you a little bit about that a little later on. And at present, I've got a property portfolio which we own, which has well in excess of 500 tenants on benefits. And when we talk about benefits, people say that, doesn't that scare me or anything? But the way that I've calculated it is that we make much more of a sustainable living from renting to that segment, which Neil will probably disagree with. But when I say that we've got a 100% rent collection record, that's, no one can argue with that fact. And we've got a very high 98% occupancy rate. I actually just checked into our office, our database this morning. I actually noticed that it's not 98%, it's actually 99%. So, going into work tomorrow, the aim is to try and fill it so that's 100%. So I don't like voids. That's, I don't suppose anyone does. Right, just so that people are aware, and if they are missing out, we had the best part. A lot of people register for this webinar, and some people register and don't turn up. Other people, have to go out for whatever reason. It is being recorded, but it is for our personal use only. So if you do miss out, unfortunately, you've had to miss out. We won't be sending the recording out, or it will be very specifically on personal request. So let's keep moving forward. In 2012, I got asked very kindly by YPN magazine, and if you're not already a member or a subscriber of YPN magazine, I strongly suggest it because it's your property network magazine. It's written by property investors for property investors. So I've got a regular column that I write in there every month without fail, and I've been writing it nearly 2.5 years now. And every month I find something different to write about. So I think this year I talked about obviously your goals, and this month I talked about goals and journeys. But last year in May I talked about how you can actually become a sourcer and also a property trader. And here's one of the articles that I wrote talking about, do you buy it, hold it, or sell it? And one that I actually wrote about in November 2014 was rent to rent, and was it worth all the hype? And I gave some examples, and I talked about the cash flow that you can actually generate from doing rent to rent correctly. So that's enough about me. And what I'd like to do is introduce you over to a gentleman to the name of Neil McCoy-Ward, who's going to tell you a little bit about who he is and what he's done. So Neil, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Arsh. And I'll just say one of the points he said about Neil might disagree with the what you said there on the LHA. Just for the people at home, Arsh and I have completely different business models. It's not that I would disagree with the way he does it. It's that I don't deal with the LHA market. My market is more upper scale. So I deal with professionals, professional HMOs, and I even do some students and worker properties now. And I'll explain the difference a little bit later as we go through the rent-to-rent segment. But I've been a landlord for a long time now. This is my 11th year. So I own single lets, HMOs, and I do a lot of rent-to-rent, deal sourcing, investment packaging, refurbs, a host of things for landlords. And I really fell into that because I started, well, I'm sure any of you that are investors at home, you'll have gone through lots of different letting agents. A lot of them, not all, but a lot of them will just give you a load of waffle. They don't really care about your property. And that was happening to me over and over again. So in the end, I thought, this is getting ridiculous. So I ended up setting up things for myself. And then I thought, right, I need home improvement stuff here for this house, or I need a renovation. So again, I ended up setting up a small refurb company, home improvement company, and it really just grew out of that. But actually, that really came out of the rent-to-rent, because when I got into rent-to-rent, the scale that I took it to so quickly, I needed all these things. So I'll actually explain to you a little bit later on how you can get these things as well and do these things, because it is very easy money for not a lot of work, especially if you're just referring certain tradesmen and builders all the time and taking 10 to 15% cut on whatever the job is. So we'll talk about that later. The other thing that I do is I'm a keynote speaker, so I speak all over now, especially in the last year. It's been worldwide, but before that I used to speak all over the UK. So I think it's about 100,000 people now that I've spoken to, and I own the Forward Thinking group. So the link's there if you want to have a look at that, make a note of it, have a look later. You can see all the different companies that I own and run. I do corporate marketing and sales training, so that's why I'm on the webinar this evening. I'm going to talk about a little bit of a different style. This is not the stuff that you would learn at university marketing. This is more guerrilla style marketing, or what I like to do is direct marketing. So many people now are going away from online, going away from direct marketing to online marketing, and I think people are missing a trick there, because I get more results from offline direct marketing than 10 companies combined. So I'll show you some of that. We're actually going to go through some examples so you can see how I do my marketing. And I was also entrepreneur in residence, and I do a lot of entrepreneurial education for universities and things like that. And we actually got University of the Year through that last year. So that's a little bit on me without going into too big a story. Should we move on to the next slide?
Okay, Neil, do you want to carry on?
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk about this. So Arsh and I, when we first got together and started doing business together, we both looked at what we both felt was important in business, in training, as business partners. And these were the things that we came up with. The first thing that popped up was money, of course. It was about making money. That's what we're in business for, to make a profit. But actually, the money wasn't the motivator. And it's the same to every one of you who I'm sure sat at home. The money's not the motivator. It's actually what you can do with that money. It's the freedom that you get from the money. So I remember before that I had financial freedom, I didn't have any of these things that you can see on screen here. My health was poor. I didn't take good holidays. I wasn't able to travel. I had hardly any time to myself. Not good relationships, not good family relationships, due to stress and workload and things like that. So actually, when you have a property portfolio, or you get into setting up a business in property, no matter what it is, whether it's rent to rent or deal sourcing or one of the other branches, what you'll find is all 6 of these areas on screen will align perfectly. You'll have that excess money that you'll have time, because I'll show you how to systemize your property businesses. So you'll have that time while the systems run in the background for you. You'll have more time to spend with family, with your husband, wife, children, whoever it is. Better health. Instead of, a lot of people these days don't take care of their health. It becomes second to work and money and the rat race. You have time for that. And my personal favorite is travel and holidays. I probably spend 6 months out of the year, every year, outside of the UK, because I really love to experience new cultures. I like the sunshine. I'm not a fan of the English winters. So you get all these things. They fall perfectly in line. And that's our commitment to all of you, really, mine and Arsh's, is that we will help you to get these things. If you just commit to doing the work, we will, we'll go as far as we need to help you to have this alignment as well, because we really feel that everyone should have this. It's not, it's not just the few privileged that should have these benefits. Everyone really should have this. And if you think back 100 years, everybody was self-employed back then. You had a blacksmith, you had these stables, the baker, all these. It's only, the Industrial Revolution and other times like that everyone has come into jobs now. So you've got the few elite that own the big companies, corporations, and you have everyone else that's working the jobs. So this is a new thing. This isn't a historic thing. So really, we want to just show people how to get back to being self-employed, being entrepreneurs, so that you can have all of this. So I think that's enough for that, and we'll move on.
I suppose actually, no, in actual fact, Neil, I suppose one thing that we should do right here and now, we are at the start of 2016. Why don't we ask everyone online, why are you here? What has made you jump on this webinar tonight, other than receiving an email from myself telling you about what my strategy is? What is it that you want to achieve from property? What's your why? Why do you want to get into property? What do you want to do? So we've told you about what we do, why we do it for, but okay, so let's start reading through this, because then we can try and start creating the webinar according to the responses that we get. Okay, so freedom, financial freedom, more cash generation, want to leave a legacy. Financial freedom, financial freedom, financial freedom, be my own boss. Okay. Okay, so someone's put out quite a large statement that they want £6,000 a month. So, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting, because Arsh and I will show you some examples later to that person who posted that, of how it's not actually that difficult to earn that sort of money per month through sourcing or rent to rent. You'd be very surprised. I think Arsh will probably mention this girl later on, but we had a girl recently who we trained in rent to rent, and already she's clearing more than that within a few months. So it is possible. A lot of the time, and I remember I was in the position years ago where I used to listen to webinars and go to seminars and things like that, and I thought, yeah, that's great. This person's stood there explaining it all because they're in a fortunate position. But how do I get there? And I didn't really have that self-belief until, it built up gradually. So that's all I want to say. It is possible. I was in the position a long time ago where I was in a job and not earning a great deal of money. And I never imagined I'd be in the position I'm in now, not in a million years. So it really is possible.
Okay, right, okay. So moving forward then. So a couple of things that we're going to be covering tonight. Rent to rent and finding landlords. Now that's the biggest thing, because in order to get onto the rent to rent ladder, you need to be able to find landlords. We believe, and we firmly believe, I think we were one of the first few to start doing this, is that the best way to generate the leads to get to properties, or to get the properties at the best possible value or price, is to go direct to the owner or the landlord. Now, I know that there's lots of companies out there training that you should go direct to letting agents, and that may work well, but at some point you're going to come across an obstacle, which is the letting agent, because at some point you're going to cut them out of a fee commission. Now, you've got to remember that now in my portfolio businesses, I also run a letting agency. So I can sit here not only with a hat of as a landlord, but also a hat as a letting agent. And I would pretty much imagine that if you came to me and said, Arsh, you've got this property on your books, let me rent it off you for 3 or 5 years, and you're not going to make any commission off that, I'm going to pretty much turn around and say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Now, if you're direct with the owner, that question that you've asked them seems a lot more appealing, because we're going to be talking about time and convenience tonight. So that's one part of the webinar. Second part, we're going to be talking about deal sourcing. And the reason why we're doing a 2-hour special is because we believe that this goes hand in hand. When you're in direct contact with the owner, from time to time, the owner will want to sell. The time to time, you know, you've got to, I wrote in a magazine last year, and some people thought I was a little bit stupid, that to be successful in property, you've got to be more than a one-trick pony. You've got to be deal sourcing. You've got to be doing rent to rent. You've got to have your own portfolio. You may have to have a letting agency. You've got to have a maintenance company. And all these are going to be income generating and revenue generating. And it's by getting yourself a step on the ladder that all these income streams start to form themselves. So we'll be talking about that a little later on. But more importantly, as I said, we're in January the 3rd, 2016. We're going to be talking about how you can create your master plan for the year, how you can make this year your year. It's going to be a powerful webinar. And like I said, I want you to stay on track with us. We're going to start from the very beginning. And if there are any points you feel like we're going far too fast, or you want to ask a question, by all means, feel free to just put it in and let's answer it whilst we're there. So first thing, let's talk about rent to rent and finding landlords. Neil, you okay for me just to whiz through the basics?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so with rent to rent, there's 3 people involved. There's the landlord who owns a property, the property owner. Then there's you in the centre, who's looking to do the rent to rent deal. And then the third part of the jigsaw is the tenants, who's hopefully going to be renting the property off you. So 3 people involved, and it really is as simple as that. And the beauty about rent to rent is that, believe it or not, this is not a new concept. This concept has been around for generations, but has stemmed from the commercial property industry, because rent to rent has been around for years in the commercial aspect, and it only came to the forefront when mortgages started to become a little bit harder to get. Finance started to get harder. People started to look for more strategic ways as to how to generate cash or cash flow from property. So in simple terms, you rent the property from the landlord. You may have to do some like refurbishment on the property to get the property up to a lettable standard, and then you rent the property out room by room, which will hopefully give you profit per month. So let's just have a quick look at that. So I'm going to let you into a little story as to why I think rent to rent is possibly one of the better strategies out there to generate cash flow. And I've got a lot of single let properties. I've got a lot of HMOs, but I've still got a lot of single lets just to keep that balance in my portfolio. But now let's just use this property as an example. Now you've got a standard single let. Single let property, renting out for £850 a month. Let's just say the mortgage on it is, say, £600 a month. It's generating a cash flow of £250 a month, which over a year is going to produce best part of £3,000, which isn't going to set the world on fire. But more importantly, if I went to buy this property, let's just say in Wolverhampton, it's the value is, say, £100,000, just to keep the numbers simple. Now, in order for me to buy this, I've got to put in a 25% deposit, which is £25,000. I've then got to get a 75% loan to value mortgage, which is £75,000. I've then got to instruct a solicitor. I've then got to instruct well, I've got to find a mortgage broker. I've got to find someone that can get me the product. I've got to find a solicitor. I've got to get a surveyor. And by the time you've totted up all those costs, you know, that's near enough the best part of £5,000 plus your £25,000 deposit. So you need £30,000 just to produce £3,000 a year. So it's going to take 10 years just to recoup your deposit to purchase the property. Now, if you're in somewhere like London, obviously you're going to benefit from somewhere like capital growth. Whereas if you're in the Midlands, you're working on cash flow. Now, for me, that doesn't set the world on fire. And not only that, if you're limited on your funds, you can very easily come to a halt in your property journey. If every property is going to require £30,000 capital input, it's going to bring you to a halt very quickly. No one is a bottomless pit of cash. So let's just say for this example that this property's got 4 bedrooms and it's got a living room on the ground floor, a dining room, a kitchen and a bathroom. Now, when that property is empty, regardless, you'll still have to pay the mortgage. So you'll still have to pay £600 a month. You'll still have to pay council tax, depending on the location. You'll still have to pay some of the bills, so the electric and gas standing charges, if you decide to keep them going. And the one thing that I don't like is that you can't go to a mortgage company and say, you know what, unfortunately, my property is vacant at the moment. Do you mind if I have a break from paying the mortgage? Because all they'll say is, thank you, Mr. Elahi, we're going to start repossessing the property, which is not a position that you want to be in. And what I like about rent to rent is that when you rent a property out by the room, the property is never or very rarely empty. Because technically speaking, let's just use the example where you've got the 4 bedrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen and bathroom. Now, if we let out 5 of those rooms, so the 4 rooms on the first floor and 1 of the rooms on the ground floor, because we've still got a communal lounge, the living room, communal kitchen and communal bathroom, we've got 5 lettable rooms, and let's just say that we're renting them out for £400 a room per calendar month, which means that we're now generating £2,000 per calendar month as opposed to £850. Automatically, it starts to look a lot more appealing. More importantly, with a rent-to-rent, you don't actually own the property. Remember, you're renting it off a landlord, but yet you're making more cash flow from it as if you were owning it. So £2,000 renting. Now, let's just say that you've decided to give the landlord £850. Now, the standard practice from a HMO is that the landlord pays all the bills. So that would include council tax, water rates, electricity and gas, potentially broadband. And the average for a 5-bed HMO is approximately £350 a month. So that means that with the rent that we pay to the landlord and the utility costs, that calculates at £1,200. Remember, our rental income is £2,000, giving us a profit of £800 per calendar month, not taking into consideration stuff like bad debt, voids and maintenance. But even then, if it's fully income producing, over a year, the £800 a month is £9,600 a year in cash flow, as opposed to £3,000 that it would have produced as a single let. Does it start to stack up so far? Okay, so is everyone still with me before we go any further? One lady's just said that she can't hear me, but everyone else still can. So if you are experiencing some audio issues, what I'd suggest is that you log yourself back out, log yourself back in, and let's keep going. So, okay, so everyone's with me. And the reason why rent to rent is so popular in the property industry is because there is no mortgage required. No solicitors need to get involved. There's no 25% deposit required. In actual fact, there's very little capital required, and it's a lot easier to generate cash flow. You can turn up to meet a landlord today, and you could take his keys off him today and start doing the work on the property tomorrow to let out for the end of the week. That's how simple it is. And it instantly creates you a business. So, Neil, do you want to talk about return on investment?
Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so ROI stands for return on investment. One other thing I want to mention is that Arsh kept saying HMO, HMO all the time. What that stands for is house of multiple occupancy. So I know there are some people online that are quite new to property. Um, you have two types of property: a single let, where you just rent out a house as it is to a family or whoever, and then you have an HMO. An HMO is where you basically rent out by the room. So you might have 4, 5, or even more rooms within a single property. So that's the difference. Okay, so ROI, return on investment. And being an investor myself, I'm very big on this. I teach a lot of this, and this is the interesting thing. A lot of time when people are asking me what's the best return on their capital right now, I say the best return you can get is through rent to rent. But some of you are not willing to do it because you just want to invest cash. Whereas there'll be people sat at home online right now who will be willing to do this. And rent to rent is unbelievable for return. There's nothing else like it. Average is about 360% per year. So I'll show you how that looks. Let's say you take on a property from a landlord and you're offering, like Arsh said there, you're offering the market rent each month. You might spend £2,000 just painting the property, new carpets, maybe a bit of new furniture to get it to a high standard, because the higher the standard, the more rent you'll receive per room. So it really is in your best interest to spend more money to get it to a good standard. So you spent 2,000. Let's say you only make 600 profit a month. So over 12 months, you're making £7,200 net profit. Okay, so if you look at the math on that then, 7,200 profit divided by 2,000 investment gives you 3.6. Or, in simple terms, it's a 360% return in the first year. Next slide, Ash. Okay, so if you look at that then, over a typical 3-year contract, which is the minimum you'll do with a landlord for rent to rent, that's a 1,000% return on investment. Now, I am an investor, so if you know anywhere that you can get 1,000% within 3 years, please let me know, and I'm all in with you, because I don't know any other investment anywhere that will guarantee you 1,000% in 3 years. It's unheard of. And the great thing is you completely control the asset. You're looking after the house for the landlord. And if you compare this to most investors, like Arsh said, where you put in 25 to 50,000 pound deposit on just one house, they'll only get 5 to 12% return per year on that investment. That's it, 5 to 12%, and we get 360%. Can you see why this is such an amazing strategy now? And we'll show you how to do it. Let's go to the next slide, Ash. So this is interesting. Nelson Rockefeller, very, very wealthy man. And he said the secret to success is to own nothing, but to control everything. And Arsh gave a good example of this recently, where we were talking about the businesses that are in huge growth at the moment, and they're all businesses that own absolutely nothing. You've got all these cost comparison sites, Money Supermarket, they're brokers. Spareroom.co.uk, that's a brokerage. It's people advertising rooms. You've got all these different services now, and no one owns anything. It's more brokerage, and it's the same with rent to rent. You just control the asset, but you don't have to own it, so you're not taking any of the risk.
Neil,
Next.
can I just jump in there? Well, let's just look at some of the largest businesses in the world today. Facebook doesn't own any of the content. Uber taxis doesn't actually own any of the taxis. Airbnb doesn't actually own any accommodation. Now, has that hit home with you? Because at some point you would have used one of those services, and they don't own any assets. And that's exactly the same with rent to rent. With rent to rent, unless you've got a lease option in place where you've got the option to purchase, you'll never own the asset. All you're doing is managing it on behalf of the owner for the period that you agree. So hopefully that's, in a nutshell, told you a little bit about it. So keep going, Neil. So is this
Yeah.
one of your properties in Coventry?
Yeah, these are just a few of the first ones that I did there. Seems a long time ago now, but that was very simple for me. And bear in mind, I didn't have a mentor back then. I just had to figure this out on my own, really. And it only took me a year to get to £11,000 a month cash flow. So that's net profit. When I say 11,000 a month, I don't mean then I take all the deductions. I mean that was the profit that was left over. And it was the business was valued by a business, one of these companies that come in that want to, they give you all the spiel about wanting to buy your company and all that. And they valued it at £250,000. And that was after just one year. And I recently had an offer of 1.2 million from a Chinese investor who wanted to buy the whole rent-to-rent portfolio as it was as a business. So it really shows you how fast you can build a business. So on paper, you could say, you can become a millionaire on paper that quick. It really is that fast. And again, Arsh and I are very different to most people because we don't advise going to letting agents for rent-to-rent deals, which is going against the grain. I know a lot of people have started to come around to our way of thinking now. And I want to really quickly say why. If you're doing it through letting agents, like a lot of people advise, you're paying huge fees and you don't have the same control. When you go direct to the vendor, you're not losing £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 in deposits and fees and things like that. So you've got that money to invest back in. So some people say, how did he do it so fast in one year? It's basically because I went direct. I didn't pay any fees to letting agents, so all that money was invested straight back into the portfolio. And if you think about it, it might not seem a lot, saying I saved 1,500 in fees or 2,000 in fees and deposit, but that is another house, which makes you another £600, £800, £900 cash flow a month. If you add that up over a year, that's another, let's say, seven to £10,000. That's another then 4, 5, 6 houses, and it just builds upon itself. It's like a snowball. It just keeps rolling. Okay, let's go to the next slide anyways, just to give an example of what I did the first year. So most people will be saying, this is really great, but how can I do it as well? And quite simply, you just need to do 3 things. It's that simple. Number 1 is educate yourself. That's the most important thing. How to do the strategy effectively. And the key thing is here, and I learned this late in life when I was an entrepreneur. I thought, I'll save money, I'll do it all on the cheap, I'll figure it out myself, and it takes you 5 times as long and it costs you twice as much because of the mistakes. So now I would never make that mistake again. It's a newbie mistake. I'll always take training on it. Every time, I'll always take training, pay for the training, as long as the cost is reasonable, and I'll always do it that way. So number 1 is educate yourself on the rent-to-rent. Number 2, you've got to know how to research the goldmine area. So Arsh and I, we have sort of 14 to 15 criteria points that we have for our selection. I know some people say, there's only 3 or 4 things you need to know, but they're the people that haven't got successful portfolios. So we have a strategy with that as well. So that's the next thing you need to do. You need to find a really good goldmine area that works effectively. And there's a lot of variables there as well as your checkpoints. You've got to think, what's a good area for my target market? So you're going to do LHA, like Arsh. Are you going to do students, workers, professionals, boutique, specialist? You've got to think which market you're going to go into. You're going to do big houses, you're going to do small houses. There's so much to look into. And then number 3, so hopefully you're writing these things down, you've got to know how to find the landlords and make the deals. So the reason it's highlighted in yellow is because that's what I'm going to show you tonight. So at least you get one of these steps. So what we're going to talk about now, if we go to the next slide, is actually how to find those landlords. So I'm going to give you the 3 most effective ways. I've seen so many different things on the internet on property and all the Facebook groups and all of this on how to find landlords. And I'm not one of these people that just takes things at face value. I will always test anything that I'm told. I'll test it to the limit. And when I used to get all these, ideas and tips and all these strategies on the groups, I didn't say anything. I would just take it away and I would test it. And I've got to tell you, 90%, 95% was all a load of rubbish, complete rubbish. So I'm going to show you the 3 most effective ways that I source property. And I'll show you how effective this is. Using these 3 strategies I'm going to show you now, I didn't do them all, but these were good leads that came in, 37 rent-to-rent properties in 1 month of July of last year, which was a crazy month. 1 month, 37 solid leads came in. So let me show you how I did it. So number 1, these are direct adverts. They're called business card ads, and they go in your local newspaper, not the paid newspaper, because that costs a lot of money. These go in the free newspaper, or the advertising newspapers, or the cheap newspapers, the ones that people just pick up on a weekend and have a quick read of. And there's a reason why, and there's a lot of psychology behind this. The people who read the paid newspapers are the sort of people that will use letting agents. That's why you've got in there, you've usually got a spread of 30 pages of a property guide or something like that as a pullout. You don't want to be advertising in there, because wherever the masses are, that's where you don't want to go. You want to go where everyone else isn't. So a business card size advert in a small local paper like this will cost you peanuts. I mean, you're talking £20 a week, where it might run once a week, or if it's a monthly newspaper, it might cost you 80 to, well, not even that, more like 40, 50 pounds they start at. I just put one in it was called Asian Times or something like that. I did one back in the summer, and it was printed monthly, 30,000 distribution, and that was £27, including the VAT. And that was really good, got a lot of leads from that. So you've just got to be creative, and you've really got to shop around and find out what sort of deals you can get. And remember, with advertising people, they're in it to make profit. So there's always a lower price. Whatever price they tell you, if they say it's £100, you know you can get them down to at least £80. They always mark it up a little bit. So just remember that. So I just pulled off today, before the webinar, just a couple of little adverts that I saw, and I saw them and I thought they're quite good adverts. So I just grabbed these to show you. You want to make your adverts really simple. People often overcomplicate these things. They put all this information in with all these bullet points and all this stuff, and it messes up the advert. The key to a really effective advert is just, you want to do a headline, you want to put a couple of bullet points, and then you want to say call now with your phone number. That's it. So an example you can see here, cash house buyers in 24 hours up to 100% market value, and then it's got their phone number where I've blocked out their details. It really is that simple. They've got a couple of bullet points, so that's an effective advert. Middle one, promote your business, book online ad, book newspaper ad, phone line number. It's really that simple. The one on the left is a little bit more cluttered, but it's effective. Look at the headline, 0% management fee for the first 6 months. Properties required urgently, so keyword there, urgently. So it's really about putting a really effective advert out, and that will source you a lot of leads straight away. And you want to put those all over the place. So maybe for your first month, set yourself a marketing budget of, even if it was really small, £100. That will give you, that will generate you a good few leads. Because remember, you don't need that many leads. It always makes me laugh when people talk about, oh, I generated 200 leads and all this, and they're showing off. As a rent-to-rent landlord, what can you do with 200 leads? It takes 1 to 2 weeks to turn around one house, and that's if you've got a team like I have.
Neil,
so 200 leads. Yeah.
This is where we're going to differ. There's no such thing as too many leads. And then this is the good thing about me and Neil, because Neil thinks that and we was on one of our last workshops. When was the last one, Neil? Was it in October? I think it was in tail end of October. And Neil said that you should never try and take a property on in November or December. And I thought, really? Okay, that's interesting. Because Neil said, well, no one's going to rent the property out in November, December off you. And I said, well, if you don't take that property in November or December, come January, the landlord's going to rent it himself anyway. And believe it or not, a couple of my mentees who have been actively marketing, I think one of them are actually online tonight. Hopefully Martin's online. And he actually took on 2 properties at the tail end of December. So the week before Christmas, he took on 2 properties up north in Manchester. And he's actually rented them out just before Christmas as well. So, you know, this is where me and Neil completely disagree. I'm rather open out to mass market and get as many leads in as you can, and then sift them through your filter process, which we'll talk about. And for every lead or every deal that you get through, there will be an opportunity. I'm a big believer that there's no such thing as a dead lead. So that's just write that down, actually. There is no such thing as a dead lead. If someone approaches you to buy their property off them, but you can't afford to buy the property off them, I've set up a system called the ABC plan. Can I buy it? Can I sell it? Can I rent it? If I can't buy it because it's not what I'm looking to offer on it, can I sell it for them to my bank of investors, which we'll be talking about shortly? If I can't do A or B, can I rent it, which will then become a rent to rent? So every step of the way, I should be looking to help every investor or every lead that comes into our office. So that's why I go out mass market. Now, I appreciate what Neil does, but we'll be talking about the difference about what me and Neil do in a short while. But this is you're going to have 2 completely different perspectives. And with all due respect, my way of thinking may not sit well with some of you. I'm very aggressive with my marketing. I like the fact knowing that we've got lots of leads and we've got lots of things to pursue. Where some of you may be sitting on the other side of it and thinking, well, I only want a handful that I can deal with, which sits in line with what Neil does. So hopefully, sorry, Neil, I know I've completely railroaded you there, but
That's okay.
But yeah, like
no, you're spot on there, Arsh. Yeah, I mean, no, you're spot on there, Arsh. Actually, but yeah, that is the difference between Arsh and I. He is more aggressive with his marketing. He likes to get absolutely hundreds of leads in, whereas for me, I'd rather target it very niche so that I don't want to be on the phone to lots of random people. You know, I'd rather just have 2 or 3 really strong leads come through, speak to them on the phone, and do the deal. So it's just a little bit different because there is no right or wrong way to do things. It's just, you know, your preference and, you know, your personality. Arsh and I have very different personalities. Arsh is a lot more outgoing than me. So, you know, it's just personality, really. Okay, let's go to the next slide anyway, Arsh. We'll go on to the second strategy. Now, this was my, I think this is probably the thing that made me most well known in the rent-to-rent industry. It was this strategy here. I sourced an entire portfolio of houses, which I manage, actually, from a gentleman who, I can't give away too much information because you'll know who he is, but he's a very well-known, famous man, and he had a huge portfolio in Coventry, and I had no idea that I'd written a letter to him. So what came from that letter was a meeting, which was the most bizarre meeting I've ever had in my life. Imagine being sat in a suit and tie on a Sunday morning at 7 a.m., which is, you know, what he specified, with him in his flip-flop shorts and t-shirt with his advisors and all sorts sat there wanting to hear my pitch. It was a complete shock to the system, but it all went well and I got the portfolio. But let me show you what I did there to get that. So this is what I would consider true direct mail marketing, and it really is as simple as this. Most people are always talking about leaflets for rent to rent, and I know whenever someone says that they built this huge portfolio out of rent to rent out of leaflets, I know, not being rude, but they're not telling the truth. And the reason for that is this: if I look at every single one of my landlords in my portfolio, not one of them live within 20 miles of Coventry. Because, and this is how you know when someone's waffling to you, so when you're talking to people at property meetings and the rest of the thing, this is how you know if they're telling the truth. If someone wants to do a rent-to-rent deal with you, they're not going to be a 30-year-old young landlord that lives down the road. Because if they're that age and they live down the road, why would they not do it themselves? There's no reason they would do it themselves. The sort of landlords that will go for this are older people. So they're going to be 50 plus. I think I've only got one landlord under 50. They're going to be 50 plus. They're going to live away from the area, and they want a completely hands-off deal. They don't want any hassle at all. They want to spend time with their children or grandchildren. They don't want to get calls from tenants or anything like that. That's your target market. So when I hear, oh, I found people through these leaflets that I dropped to the house, and I found people from Facebook marketing and all this, I know people are just talking absolute rubbish, because that is not the target market, and they're not the people who will do a rent-to-rent deal. So there's just one little tip for you there. So what I did was this. I initially did the leaflet drop, and I did the Facebook ads, because I heard all these gurus talking about it, and then I realized it was just a load of rubbish. The leaflets that I dropped, none of the landlords live in that area. They live miles away, so they didn't get the leaflets. The Facebook marketing didn't work, because 50, 60, 70-year-old landlords are not on Facebook all day messing around. They're reading a newspaper, they're reading a book, they're sat in the conservatory, they're doing things like that. So this is what I did. I would go around, and whenever I'd see a property that looked good on Rightmove or Zoopla, or if I just saw a board up in my target area, I'd write that house number down, the address, the house number, and the agent it's on with. I'd then go home, I'd look it up, I'd look at the photos, look at the floor plan, and I'd say, yeah, okay, that's a good property, that will work for me, and it's in a good area. So I'd know straight away, looking at the price, whether it would work. Because whatever price I see online or whatever, I know that through my sales system and the marketing techniques that you'll all learn, that the price will drop by at least 15 to 20%. So if there's a property on for £1,000, I know I'm going to get that for around 700 to 750. And it really is, it probably sounds crazy, how could you get it that low? But it's actually really simple. And you just take the landlord through a logical process, which we'll talk about shortly, and it's 9 out of 10 times they'll go for it. So what I would do, I'd get all these addresses, and once I knew they were good properties, I would go onto Land Registry. So I'm not sure the website URL, but it's called the Land Registry. And then I would download something called the title deed. So title deed. And they cost £3 each to download the title deed. What that will give you is a report in PDF format. And on that report, it will tell you everything about that house. It will say whether there's a mortgage on it, who the owner is, where the owner actually lives, because it's more than likely going to be a buy-to-let property. So his address will be registered at his home address, not that address. And then all you do is you take a letter, you write it, and I've got a format, a template that I give to everybody that trains. So you get this exact template. You don't need to change anything. All you do is you change the address, you sign it off, and then you send it in the post to this landlord. Now here's the interesting thing. I started experimenting with coloured envelopes, and the success rate was unbelievable. It was phenomenal. I also started adding red stamps. I don't mean the postage stamp. I mean an actual stamp that said to be opened by addressee only, and I'd stamp that twice on that letter so that it was an important letter. And the results that I got from that were just unbelievable. And the calls I would get were just daily, and I wasn't even sending out a lot of letters. And I always teach this to everyone that does training with me and Ash, and people are just blown away by the results they get from this strategy, because it's just unheard of. It's not something that anyone else is doing. So that's the second strategy, and that will make you a fortune. So let's go on to number 3, Arsh. Okay, now this is my army of tradesmen technique. I know a lot of people have started stealing this technique now, which is good. the more people, the better. So this is what I came up with one day just by pure fluke. I was with my builder, and we were talking about a development that was going on, and we were just going over some plans, some blueprints, and I told him about this rent-to-rent that I'd gotten into, and he said, "Oh yeah, what's all that about?" So I told him all about it, and he said, "Would you sort of pay any sort of fee or anything like that if I, for example, was to have a house?" And I said, "Yeah, 200 quid or 250 quid or something." He goes, "Really? Okay, I've got," and then he listed off all these different houses, and within a week I had 2 houses from him, from landlords that he knew had empty houses. So I thought, that's a really good idea. I wonder if this would work with any other tradesmen. So I then started calling around a few of my contacts in the trade. So plumbers, electricians, builders, carpenters, painters and decorators, everyone you can think of. And I joke you not, the amount of leads that I got was insane. Absolutely crazy amount of leads. And last year was the biggest year for me in terms of the rent to rent. I had so many properties just sat there waiting to come on the books that in the end I think we had to turn away somewhere in the region of 40 houses. And it was really from doing these strategies here and just getting your tradesmen to keep bringing these to you. Because if you think about it, if you're a tradesman, what's the best thing for you to get? It's cash straight in your hands. They love it. Tradesmen love cash in their hands where there's no tax or anything, no VAT and stuff like that to pay on it. So if they're getting £200 every time that they bring you a lead, what are they doing? A, they're doing the landlord a favour. The landlord thinks they're great because they're helping them out, and they're getting £200 from you. It is the absolute perfect marketing team. You've got yourself your own marketing and sales team for free because they're on commission only basis. If you know a better strategy than that, please let me know, because these 3 strategies I've just showed you have really made me a fortune and allowed me to build such a huge portfolio so quickly. So those 3 strategies for me are the best things that you can possibly do. We actually have a huge marketing mind map as well that will, I think we bring it up on screen in a little while, and there's hundreds of strategies on there, absolutely hundreds. So you're welcome to do as many as you like. Just for me, I'd rather give you the best stuff on the webinar straight away. So let's go to the next part, Arsh.
Just something to bear in mind here is that, remember, when you're putting out a leaflet or something, it's a static advert. It can only go to one place and it can only be read by that one person. Something to bear in mind is that with tradespeople, these guys are walking around. They're like a talking and walking billboard for you, providing that you've got them on board. So something to take into consideration is find them, incentivize them, and continuously keep using them. Don't just, use them for your jobs. So if you've got jobs that need doing for your other properties, use these guys. The more that you use them, the more friendlier that they're going to become. The more money they're going to make. You've got to grease their wheel, if that makes any sense. So hopefully that's, remember, these guys, they don't just go to one house every day throughout the whole year. They go to multiple houses. They meet multiple people every day. And it's like word of mouth. Word of mouth is the biggest form of marketing. And all you're doing is that they're being paid on their performance. And hopefully that's just struck a chord with you, because you don't pay them until they've actually bought you a lead. So it is pretty much like, if they haven't bought you anything, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But in essence, all you've done is you've had a chat with someone. And so, yeah, hopefully that's just give you something to think about. So carry on, Neil.
Okay, this is the next biggest question that I get asked, and I know Arsh does as well. And it's a lot of time we get phone calls, because we actually give you our personal phone numbers at the end of this webinar. So if you want to give us a call, you're more than welcome. And usually when I get calls, it will be exactly this. Hi Neil, my name's whatever. I've done this rent-to-rent course with this trainer before. I've not been successful. And in the group, nearly everybody else has not been successful. I'm really fed up now. I don't know what to do. If I tell you my problems, can you help me? And that's usually how nearly all the calls go, okay, when I get them. And this is the 80% that I've identified for why they're failing. Okay, and this is why we'll show you how we can help you with this. So number one, only go direct to vendor. So no letting agents. And I apologize for anybody that, you know, has done some sort of training. They've been told, go to letting agents, it's the best way to do it, because I just 100% disagree with it. It's the complete wrong way to go about it. You'll never really get ultimate success going down this road. So only ever go direct to vendor, because that's how you're going to save a fortune and you're going to be able to grow and scale your business really quickly. I mean, how else can you
Sorry, Neil,
sort of grow? Yeah.
throw into the pipe here is that if you're going direct to letting agents, if the letting agent is interested, if they decide to put you on a tenancy agreement and then you decide to rent out the rooms, technically speaking, you've gone into a whole different realm of subletting, which, depending on whether the owner's got a mortgage or not, can be against their mortgage terms and agreements. So that can be completely almost illegal. So you've got to be really careful as to what you do, especially when you're dealing with letting agents. Letting agents don't want to lose a commission, so they're going to try and sign you up to the property as much as they can so that they keep their commission.
Yeah, exactly. And Arsh has raised a really important point there, which I want to mention. And that's that what we do is very unique. We've spent, I don't even know how much we're up to now, Arsh, probably £7,000 or £8,000, maybe even more, in legals. We've hired the best solicitors, property solicitors you can get in the country to go over, and we're constantly going over our agreements and things like that, making sure everything's up to date with the law, and etc. Now, the difference between our management agreement and what everybody else is you sort of passing around on the internet and things like that, our management agreement is not a tenancy agreement. So what I mean by that is it's structured in almost the same way as a letting agent's management agreement with a landlord. The only difference is that we offer that landlord a fixed monthly rent. So for example, £800, it's fixed. Everything else is exactly the same as a letting agent would do. So what that allows us to do is to rent out the property on their behalf by the room. So again, no difference to a letting agent. The only difference here is that because we're putting in the extra work and the creativity, we get to keep all the rest of the profit. It's that simple. And you'll find most people don't have an agreement like that. They'll do corporate lets and they'll do tenancies and they'll sublet and things like that. So you've really got to make sure you're doing it properly and legally. So let me get back to where I was. The second thing is negotiations training. You don't need to be a salesperson to be good at this. And I've proved this countless times now with people who have got no sales training. I've given them the exact same training as the other 10,000 people who've been through the training, because I run training courses on sales, corporate training. Everyone gets exactly the same training and they all go off and have success from it, because it's a proven psychological formula. It's just patterns, basically. Everyone follows the same patterns and it works each time. So that's essential to get negotiations training. And you've got to have a really good system to follow. Number 3 is to get effective marketing. And there's just 4 strategies really that are the key strategies you need to follow. There are hundreds and thousands out there, but really there's 4 key strategies. Let's go on to the next one, because hopefully you've written those 3 things down. That's what you need to get. Next slide, Arsh. Okay, Arsh, I'm going to let you sort of carry on from here.
Okay. Well, this is predominantly self-explanatory. If you want to be a successful entrepreneur, the 2 things that you must first master: sales and marketing. And that was written by I don't know how to pronounce his surname, so let's just call him the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad. And the reason why we say that is because, remember we're talking about generating all these leads. You can have all the leads sitting on your table, but if you do not know how to close the deal, it's pointless having all those leads, because if you don't know how to close a deal, you'll never close any of those deals, and they will literally just be dead leads. So the reason why I say that is because we ask, are you a strong negotiator? So many people have attended our rent-to-rent course, and what we do with them, we share our exact formula. I'm literally just going to whiz through this because I'm conscious of the fact that we've still got another hour and we've still got another strategy to cover. And what we talk about is that when we're talking about negotiating, you've got to be strong at negotiating, making sure that when you're in front of that landlord, you're telling him the things that not so much he wants to hear, but you're stamping in his mind why you're the best person to look after his prized asset. And also we teach the direct to vendor strategies, not letting agent strategies. So just one thing that we're going to drop in here, everything that we've talked about rent to rent, we're talking about two strategies tonight, rent to rent and deal sourcing. So we are naturally running a workshop on rent to rent, and the next one is on the 30th and the 31st of Jan. It's a 2-day event. So on Saturday, we talk all about rent to rent, talking about how to identify and dominate your goldmine area, how to get in front of a large amount of landlords, how to create a high-end finish for a low-cost budget, how to be legally compliant, talking about not subletting and avoid the pitfalls that others have been caught out with, how to calculate the numbers. That's really important, because it's all very well getting the leads, but if the landlord's asking for more rent that you're going to be generating, or it's bringing it down to a profit level where it's not going to be viable, you've got to know the numbers and learn when to walk away. And then more important, we'll be looking at Neil's exact model of how you got 11k cash flow per calendar month in 1 year. On the Sunday, we'll be talking all about negotiations, what the buying patterns are, and the sales psychology, why a landlord will give it you, understanding what his need is, understanding where his pain is, understanding how you can fulfill those, the exact process for taking on a prospective landlord, how to overcome the objectives, like the objections. So landlords are naturally going to come back to you. Okay, well, what do you do that I can't do? You don't want to give away all your secrets, but you need to come back with you need to overcome that objection with an answer that's going to fulfill his requirement. Now, what's really key is the live interactions that we have on the day. We don't actually go around calling landlords, which would be a great way of doing it, actually. But in actual fact, what we do is that we do a lot of breakout sessions where you actually perform the interview techniques against one another, as well as against me and Neil as well. And more importantly, you'll get to learn Neil's relationship selling model, which he's taught on all parts of the pond. So this is a little bit of the rent-to-rent masterclass that we did last time. We had 75 people in the room last time. As you can see, we had quite a large room, and there I am, right in the centre with my daughter, who's 2 years old, who comes on every course with me. And believe me, by the time she's 10, she's going to be a rent-to-rent master. So just something to bear in mind. Now, remember we talked about negotiations. It's about how to increase the conversion rate, more so from 1 in 5 to how about 4 in 5, from 20% to also 80%. You've got the negotiation sessions and relationship selling. Now, we'll talk about testimonials towards the end, because one person I wanted to try and get on this call tonight, unfortunately, he's not available. He's in a different country. It's a person to the name of JC, who came on one of our rent-to-rent workshops in February last year. Feels strange saying last year, 2015. But in actual fact, since coming on that workshop, he's actually secured 18 properties. That's 18 properties, which each of them are cash flowing anywhere from £600 to £1,200 per month. Now, if that hasn't impressed you, what really will impress you is that people always say, well, Arsh, I live in London. Surely this strategy won't work. Now, JC lives in Croydon, and he has managed to pull in 18 landlords in London. More importantly, this strategy works nationwide. In actual fact, it could work worldwide. JC went abroad. I think he went to Bangkok, and he managed to pull in a condo where he's paying £500 a month and he's renting it out for £1,000 a month. So it's crazy to think that this can actually work anywhere. Now, here's some of the guys that have actually been on some of our training. So we've got Deborah, who managed to pull in. My first deal was a 36-bed HMO, and she's based in London. So when people say it doesn't work in London, you've got to ask, what are they doing wrong? What have they not got? What tools have they not got in their skill set? So here's some of the guys. So I'm just going to keep moving forward. If you go on my YouTube channel, you'll see all the testimonials. So there's JC, top left-hand corner. There's Deborah, top right-hand corner. And these guys are the living testimonials for us that have gone out and absolutely smashed this. You know, JC is now, he spends most of his time abroad. He's managed to build himself a structure where he's actually got people managing the properties for him, and he's very much hands off. He just deals with the landlords, and that's where you aspire to be. You don't want to be the business. What you want it to do is you want the business to be the business, and you're the person just fronting the business. So Neil talked about mind maps on the rent to rent course. You'll get you'll get all our marketing mind maps, all of our furnishing mind maps, so that literally it is a case of every time you get a property, you just refer back to mind map. Okay, I need to get this. I need to get this from here, and it all starts to systemize itself. Now, on the rent to rent workshop, we give you the mind maps. We give you the guarantor documents. We give you the management contract, which has cost us in excess of £7,000. And so we'll be talking all about this on something which I call a key to success. So we won't talk to you too much about details now. It's the 30th and 31st of January. It's in Dudley. And on Saturday night, we're trying to have a social as well. So keep moving forward. That's rent to rent. I like to think that we're running slightly behind on time, but let's move on to strategy number 2. And the reason why we've done 2 strategies tonight is because these go hand in hand. When you're looking for a rent-to-rent opportunity, you're sourcing out an opportunity. You're looking for that deal. Remember what I said about the ABC strategy? A, can I buy it? B, can I sell it? C, can I rent it? Now, the third one was rent it, which was a rent-to-rent strategy. But when I go out, and I'll be talking to you in this hour now, predominantly, which I'll be leading, about a company that I set up 15 years ago. And it is what we've named it exactly what we do, or it is what we say it is on the tin. I've got that completely wrong, so I apologise. I set up a company called WeBuyPropertiesFast.co.uk. I purposely pulled my website off the internet tonight just so that I don't get bombarded with a load of your inquiries tonight. Because last time I put it up, I think I got 100 inquiries, to which my office started calling tomorrow, and I think it slightly annoyed some of the people. So I set up a company called WeBuyPropertiesFast.co.uk, and I was one of the very first companies that set up a shop on the High Street location in Wolverhampton. And I'll show you pictures of it in a short while. Now, when I started getting loads of leads, remember, I want mass market. I don't want to just have 10 leads and trying to exhaust those 10 leads and then think, where's my next 10 leads coming from? I want 1,000 leads. I want to exhaust those 1,000 leads. And whilst I'm getting those 1,000 leads, I want the next 1,000 to come in, because I want a constant supply of leads that I can constantly be chasing. And then once I've got those leads, I can figure out, can I buy them? If they owe more on the mortgage than I'm willing to offer, then does it turn into a lease option? Can I do something on a delayed completion? Can I do something on an assisted sale? Can I do something on the rent to rent? A, B, and C. If I can't buy it myself personally, can I sell it for them to an investor? If I'm offering circa 25% below market value and they can only afford to give 10%, will I know someone that will buy it off them for 10% below market value? If we can't do that, can I rent it off them? So they're my three strategies. And that way, every time I go out to a vendor, I would say 9 or even 10 times out of 10, I'm coming back with that property in one shape or form. Now, does that make perfect sense? More importantly, can you just check in with me and just let me know that you're still with me, because it's very quiet here. More importantly, if you can just say, does that actually interest you? Right, okay, so everyone's saying that they're still here because we're very low on questions. Okay. Right. Moving on. Yeah. Okay. So deal sourcing. I'm going to pass this part over to Neil, and then I'm going to be talking to you predominantly about how to source a deal, what we need to be looking at to source a deal, and more importantly, what you should do with the deal. So Neil, over to you.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about the last 10 years then very quickly. Don't worry, it's not going to be an hour-long session. But I remember when I bought my first house in 2005, it was very easy to get a mortgage. I mean, really, really easy. I did have to put some money down, but I think it was only something like 10%. It was nothing like the 25% you have to these days. So it's very, very small amount of money. And there was another thing that we have now called the 6-month rule, which is where you buy a house now, renovate it, and refinance it straight away. Where now they've got a rule that says you have to wait 6 months before you can refinance it. That rule wasn't in effect back then either. So I was able very quickly to buy a house, renovate it, refinance it, take that money, buy another house, renovate it, refinance it, buy another house, and I was doing quite well. And then something crazy came along called Mortgage Express 110% mortgages. And I don't know if any of you remember that, but I went pretty crazy on that. I know a lot of other people did as well. So sometimes you'll see people, the Wilsons are a perfect example, who are high-profile landlords. How did they get 500 houses or 700 houses, whatever it was? It was through this whole 100% mortgage, 110% mortgage. They were able to do a lot of it through that. So if you wonder how do people build such huge portfolios these days, it's not as easy now as it was back then. So from that, we then went into the crash in 2008, and the recession was quite bad. It hit a lot of people hard, and we were in that for a long time. But the last couple of years now, growth has started to come back. So it really has. I mean, Arsh is probably best because I've been dipping in and out over the years with selling, buying, renovating, but Arsh has been in it for the last 10 years. But I think that gives you a pretty good example of what's happened and how some people back then could buy so easily. But coming into the present day, it is a lot harder now, and you do need a lot more money and bigger deposits, which is where deal sourcing comes in, rent-to-rent comes in, a few of the other strategies. Because if you're not in that position where you've got, let's say, a few £100,000 just sat there in your bank account, how are you going to buy yourself a big portfolio of HMOs or single lets? You really can't. But at the same time, you've got a lot of people, many professionals, accountants, doctors, solicitors, people like that, who have got money. They might have 100,000 or more just sat in their bank, and they want to invest, but they're not really sure exactly how. And that's where your job as a sourcer comes in. So taking us to the present day, this, I believe, is the sort of the growth we've gone into, and we're in a good position now as sourcers to help people who have either gone through the crash or they're very new to property. So Arsh, let's go to the next slide. So I'll just cover this quickly. So how much does a deal sell for? Now, what is a deal, first of all? A deal is where you source a property from a motivated seller. So someone, for whatever reason, and I've come across hundreds of different reasons now, people want to sell their house. It's probate. They need it for, there's a ghost in the house they want to sell. Their dog is ill and they need the money for surgery. Honestly, I've had the most bizarre things you can imagine. Okay, so these are what consist of deals, and people are willing to drop on their price to move a property very fast. So the sort of fees you make are very nice indeed. So a typical small house, or let's say a flat, you're looking at £2,000 or £3,000, and all you're doing is just what an estate agent would do, sitting in the middle. The only difference is you do things a little bit more creatively and you earn your money a little bit better. The second thing is lease options, which are highly prized in the market at the moment. If you've got a lease option, you can make very good money from those, selling those on, because of all the reasons explained.
Neil, sorry, I'm just going to stop you there. Can everyone still hear us? A couple of guys who just said that their sound has gone. Okay, yeah, everyone can still hear us.
Okay, good. So lease option, rent to rent, anything that's niche or specialist, these demand quite high fees. So the minimum they'll start at £2,000, and they can go anywhere up to 10,000 or even more. It just depends on the house. A lease option that I'm working on at the moment is a house that's a very, very high-end house. I mean, we're talking 12 bedrooms. So the fee on that, with a 20% discount on the house, will be very nice. I actually like it myself, to be honest, to live in. It's a nice fixer-upper. So there's a couple of different options there. And then just an average property deal, so it might be a 4-bed house, 3-bed, 2 reception, £5,000 could be if it's an HMO. A larger house, small HMO, again 5,000, could be up to £8,000. Depends how. And here's the thing: some of you will be thinking, why would someone pay me £5,000 to £8,000? Now let me give you an example. Let's say the house was worth £200,000, and you negotiated a 20% discount. That's £40,000 off market value. Do you think if you're giving someone a £40,000 discount, they might pay you £10,000? They're still making £30,000 equity. So this is where the fees come in. Okay, and then you come into things like the larger HMOs, commercial, which is a bit out of the scope of this webinar, and then land, which is development. I've done a couple of land deals, and they really do go for crazy money. You can make more in one deal than most people will earn in a couple of years. It's that crazy. So let's go on, Arsh. Next slide. So I'll just give you an example of the best month I had last year, which was August. Again, summer, which is when it seems to be very busy for me. So this was an investor source deal. I got it from a vehicle branding, which is a wrap, basically a car wrap. I spent about 7 hours on this. I got £3,000 from the buyer, and the seller also paid me £1,200, which is what he was going to pay the letting agent. So the total fees on that were £4,200 for 7 hours work. The second was a rent-to-rent deal, and that was from one of my newspaper adverts, which I just showed you. That's 5 hours work, and I got £2,000 from the buyer. So that was 5 hours work. What's that? £400 an hour for that. Not bad if you can get it. So £400 an hour. Next slide. I did a refurb and refurb flip, so did one of my own properties, probably spent 10 hours because it was done by a maintenance team, and I sold it to a buyer, so he paid a £2,000 fee, and then I got my own fee. It was a very good cash out on that. And then the fourth one, there's a lease option deal there. It was a trade lead, so again, my army of tradespeople. It was a long time, that one. It was about 12 hours work, and that was £12,000, so that was £1,000 an hour. Don't know about you, but £1,000 an hour is pretty good money. So that was, 34 hours of work throughout the month, approximately, over £50,000 in fees. Now, I don't know about you, but most people I know don't earn that in a year. So I think, you can see the scale of this, and you think this is impressive. You want to see the sort of things Arsh does. He blows these figures away. So I'll let Arsh have a, I think you've got a couple of slides now you want to talk about.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for that, Neil. Now, what I like about deal sourcing and what I like about rent to rent, letting property can be very laborious. It can be very boring. Once you've got the property, you've got the tenants in, technically speaking, you don't see any activity for 6 or 12 months, or providing that they pay the rent on time and they haven't got many issues. It can become very boring. Now, that doesn't sit with my personality very well. I like fast pace. I like going out. I like doing deals. I like knowing that we've done that one, boom, we're off to the next one. Now, this is why deal sourcing really works well with me, because I like the fact that we're marketing. I like the fact that we've got the phones ringing. I like the fact that we've got an inquiry. And more importantly, I like the fast pace, knowing that I can still negotiate a deal. And deals come in all shapes and sizes. So anything from as small as £1,000 for a deal, right up to 40, 50, or even £100,000 a deal. And we've done them to that magnitude, where I've pulled in a deal and we've made £100,000 profit on a property that I've never owned. So when we're talking about deal sourcing, we're also talking about trading properties. That's what I call deal sourcing. So there's two types of deal sourcing. There's one where you just source the deal and you sell the deal onto someone where they go off and purchase it. Or there's actually property trading, where you actually work in the centre and you do a trade on the property. So we'll be looking at those two. So here's example number one, and here's my wonky picture. So a lady actually came into my office and she goes, I want to rent a 3-bedroom house in Wolverhampton. And as you do, you go through the whole interview technique and you understand who's she, what's she all about. And she says, well, in actual fact, I own my own flat in Birmingham. And I said, well, if you're living in Birmingham, why do you want to move to Wolverhampton? And if you already own a property, why do you want to let a property in Wolverhampton? She goes, well, I've just split up with my boyfriend. It didn't work out very well. He's the one that tried to, technically influence my decision to buy the flat in Birmingham, and now I want to be close to my friends and family in Wolverhampton. And I said to her, just out of curiosity, I said, well, as you do, you ask the question, how much did you buy it for? How long have you owned it for? What kind of lease is left on the flat? She told me that there's 51 years left on the lease, which made the property unmortgageable. We ended up buying that. Well, when I say buying it, we ended up negotiating or doing a deal on that flat at £30,000 for a 2-bedroom first floor flat in immaculate condition. And that's in Northfield in Birmingham, which is a few miles out of the city centre, but is in a great professional area. I sold that deal that afternoon for £40,000, making me a £10,000 sourcing fee. And what we had to do, I had to accompany a viewing, I had to negotiate the deal, and the beauty with deal sourcing is that you get paid straight away, because the last thing you want to do is make sure that you go through the whole process and someone doesn't pay you. So the moment we negotiate something with an investor, we request that our fee or our invoice gets paid immediately. It can be if the deal doesn't go through, obviously it's refundable. If it doesn't stack up, if it doesn't value up as we suggested, it's refundable. So there's always a level of professionalism there. More importantly, you've got to make sure that your due diligence is to the point where the deal cannot fall through. So we've got the first floor 2-bedroom flat, 51 years left on the lease, made it unmortgageable. We agreed 30, sold it for £40,000. 10 grand in a sourcing fee. Time taken, let's just say 7 days. I haven't really put a time on it, but technically it hasn't taken me 7 days. It's taken me 7 days from the point of negotiation to the point of receiving our fee was approximately 7 days. Now, would you be happy with 10 grand for very little work? Now, someone's just put here, now, how do you find the investors? And that's a great question I'm going to ask as well. I'm going to answer as well. So someone has just put sounds gone. So if you can, just a couple of you just say yes or no. I just want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm still with you. Now, here's deal number 2. This was probably my gem of 2015. I love this deal. Now, I've got letting agencies in Wolverhampton. I've got one up in Liverpool, and my focus for 2016 is to set up multiple agencies up and down the country, because believe it or not, letting agencies are a good source of producing leads. Who do you deal with? You deal with landlords. What do landlords own? They own properties. Now, would they like someone that understands property? Yes, they would. Would they like someone that would like to take the property off them long term? Potentially. And that's where I get a lot of my rent-to-rent deals from, and that's no secret. So I get a lot of my deals from my landlords who come to my letting agency, who was predominantly looking for a normal service, but I'm not normal. So here's someone that came to our Liverpool letting agency, and he says, Arsh, we need to sell this property. He goes, the market value of it is around £70,000. And here, this is the beauty about this property. It's a shop on the front, and then if you look above, it's a 3-story property. And if you look to the side there, it's quite, well, you can't see, but just follow the brick building all the way back. It's quite long. When I went over and had a look at it, he wanted £70,000 for a property for 1 shop and 4 flats. I thought, wow, that's cheap, because in Wolverhampton, you'd be looking to pay easily double that, if not triple that. So I agreed a deal with the vendor at £70,000, which is what he perceived the market value to be. Now, I know from my experience that if I got these income producing, so we did something where it was almost like a long stop delay or a long stop completion. So I said to him, okay, we're going to purchase a property, but in the meanwhile, what I want to do is potentially rent the properties out so that it's producing an income. So it worked both ways, because he was still getting a form of income whilst the transaction was going through. Now, I got the properties generating, all in all, £27,100 a year. So we let out the flats, and we let out the shop. The shop's producing £350 a month. I think the flats were producing £430 a month. And we sold it to an investor who is based in London for £110,000. The owner got his £70,000 that we guaranteed. I sold it for £110,000, and this was called a back-to-back transaction. It was a cash transaction, and we made a sourcing fee, or a fee on this property, of £40,000, and it took again 7 days. And this was a straightforward transaction. Tell a lie, sorry, it didn't take 7 days. That's a lie. It probably took about 2 months. Just purely because in the meanwhile we had to let the property out, and then we found the investor once the property let out, because we wanted to show it as a cash generating machine. Now, on £110,000, now who on the webinar tonight would have paid £110,000 for that property? I know there's guys in London that were fighting over this property. So working on the figures, and now if I'm just going to quickly get my calculator. Okay, so I'm actually going to interrupt our webinar in a sec, because we've got some special guests on. Let me just see if Mena's online. And Mena, are you here? Yes. Mena, bear with me a second. I'm going to pull you up online. Now, working on the basis of £110,000, divided by 27, let's just say 27 grand, producing approximately, well, it's well in excess of 27% of income as a percentage, as a yield. So, you know, where else can you get that kind of percentage? Now, this webinar is going to be a bit all over the place, because remember I talked about a gentleman called JC and his partner, business partner Mena. They're actually abroad at the moment, and I sent them a message earlier on Facebook asking if they could jump in on tonight's webinar. So I'm just going to unmute them and see if we can get them. JC, Mena, are you with me? Hello? Mena, JC? Mena? JC, can you hear me?
Hello?
JC?
Can you hear me there?
I can. How are you?
Very well, very well. Yourself?
Where are you? Where in the world are you?
I'm in Africa at the moment.
Okay, what are you doing in Africa?
Well, as I told you before, I'm just sourcing a couple of deals out here with some other businesses that I've got in the pipeline. So just doing this at the moment, yeah.
Okay, JC, I've spoken you. I've hyped you up a bit actually because I told these guys that you've been on our rent to rent course in February last year, and as a result of that, you've now
Yes.
gone off and sourced what 18 properties.
18, yes, 18 was the last figure we put together before the end of the year. Yeah, it's been of a little bit of a challenge because we was a bit unsure if we could do the last one before Christmas time, but it was done, so we got that one done as well. So the
Fantastic.
18th one has.
Okay, now people always say that this can't happen in London. Now, tell me, what's your experience of rent to rent in London? How are landlords perceiving it?
I've always said they're very warm to finding out what we can do, what services we can provide, as long as they're solving problems, making sure it's a win-win situation, first of all for the landlord, then for the tenants, and obviously for yourself. So I find that it works very, very well out here. London, I've never really had a problem. To be honest, just have to make sure you're giving the benefits to the landlord. When they see the benefits, they'll bite your hand off.
Fantastic. How's Mena doing? Is she with you in Africa?
No, she's not at the moment, no. But yeah, she's firing away, doing work as normal. So yeah, we're just holding on the fort at the moment, but she's doing very well.
And you've created a whole infrastructure, so you've got people managing the stock now as well.
Yes, we do, because I'm always traveling, I'm always abroad. We've had to have a manager in there now, so we've got a couple of people managing things in regards to, we've got an agency that's taking care of management, so if there's any plumbing issues, any electric issues or anything like that, we've got a team that we can call, as well as we've got a manager now in place just to give us an update. So my main focus is just getting the landlords on board, and we've outsourced a lot of the other processes.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, brilliant. Well, JC, thank you very much for being online. Is there anyone, just whilst we've got you online, is there any question that you'd like to ask JC whilst we got him? Because I appreciate him calling in from Africa is going to be quite expensive, but he can now afford it, so don't worry about that. Is there any questions that you want to ask JC directly? How did he get the deals? JC, very quickly, tell me, what was your best source of getting the deals?
So the best what we've actually done is a bit of a mixed bag. We've got some of them via agents. I'm quite a harsh negotiator, so I was able to negotiate with a lot of agents. Sorry about that. I'm actually on the busy street, so apologies. But some of them from agents. A lot of them have been done this via negotiating with landlords, putting ads out, making sure you're present in every way, shape, or form. So a lot of them I've got through networking events. I go to at least 4 network events every week, and just being very proactive. Be where landlords are. Wherever you can think a landlord would be there.
You know,
and you find that you just.
That's great advice. Tell me now, how many calls do you make a day?
I make about 50 calls a day. I speak to my conversion rate. How I usually do it is I speak to a minimum of 50 landlords a day, 7 days a week. I put in about 15 hours a day, and if it's not via meeting them face to face, first point of call, I make sure I can actually get the meeting, and then the second point is actually viewing the property. So I've got quite a few steps in order to go through. So I go with quite a large number, and I put them through a funnel, and then whoever requires my service, because you might have a landlord that likes the process, likes the product, but at this point in time they might be with a letting agent, or they have the tenancies all been covered. So it's just about being patient also.
Okay, now here's a great question. Had you any experience in property prior to coming on the rent-to-rent training?
To be honest, I've had a couple properties myself. Very novice in it. I actually got my first property when I was quite young, just by chance. But I believe this is a completely different strategy. Now, some people focus on building from scratch. Some people focus on buying a house outright. I believe rent-to-rent is a completely different strategy. So it was a completely new concept to me. Now, I think if the question is based upon can you start from the beginning and work yourself into a good process, definitely, because we had no knowledge of this system, never knew it existed, and I believe it can be done. Just give yourself all the opportunity and all the knowledge and also the time time is a very key fact. Give yourself time to get into the emotions.
Okay, JC, someone's asked, how old are you?
That's personal. I'm 28 years old.
Wow, so 28 years old, you've got 18 properties, all cash flowing. And what's your tenant preference? Is it professionals?
We've actually gone through professionals, but now we're actually going into more of a niche market. We've actually focused on. I'm this person like different avenues, like meditation and so forth. So we're actually going to go towards a line of people that do yoga, meditational individuals, and we're going to try and specialize in certain other areas, just to kind of make it a bit different. But yeah, we focus on professionals. Yeah.
What's your average room rent?
It does vary. I would say from the average from 650 up till £1,000, depending on what size the room is, where the location is.
Okay, brilliant. Right, JC, I think that's been very, very helpful. Are you about on the 30th and the 31st of Jan? Are you
I
back?
should be back in London. Yeah, should be. Yeah.
Okay, touch base with me when you get back. I'm going to see if I can get you down on the workshop that weekend.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Definitely, Arsh.
Okay, what part of Africa are you in?
Yep. I'm in and around. I've been in Jordan, I've been in Ghana, so I'm going all around different parts at the moment. Just doing a couple of other business. I always try to keep busy. I believe there's not enough hours in the day, so I try to gather as least 24 as possible.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'm gonna let you go. Thank you very much for coming on the webinar. You know what? It's great speaking to you in Africa. Have a great time.
Yes.
Let's touch base when you get back.
All right, great stuff, Arsh. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Bye bye. Wow, guys, you know what? To be fair, that is completely off the cuff. Now, I sent him a message earlier this morning asking him if he's available. I didn't receive any response, and I assumed that he was away. And so that he, just as we were talking about deal sourcing, he sent me a message. He goes, "Can I jump online?" And there he is. So he's a great guy, and hopefully I'm gonna get him on board for the 30th and 31st. So moving forward. So the property in Liverpool. Now, the things that we're going to be doing with JC going forward, he's obviously shown me that he's got the skill and the know-how to pull in deals through rent to rent. The next thing that I'm going to be training JC up on is how to do deal sourcing. So obviously he knows how to negotiate. Next thing that we need to do is expand his mindset and give him some tools in his toolbox to now go out and do deals like this. And we're going to be doing a lot of JVs with this. So everyone that comes on our workshop has an opportunity to JV with me and Neil. That's not open to any form of negotiating to anyone else other than the people on our workshop. And that's one of the reasons why people say they come on our workshop, because they have that opportunity. So going on this deal, we gave the landlord 70 grand. We sold it for 110 grand. It took 2 months to do. We made 40 grand on that deal. Would you do that? More importantly, the average wage in the UK is between £26,000 and £30,000. Have we made more than the average wage in one deal? Now, let's keep moving forward. Here's deal number 3. Now, I actually knew a lot about this property prior to selling it, because I had a Russian investor. He came from London, and he said, "Arsh," he goes, "build me a HMO." And it's quite rare that I do this, and I agreed to help him. We built him a fully exclusive HMO, generating £20,800 per annum. Now, as we got this all income generating, he said, "Arsh, I need to sell it now, just purely because I've got a bigger deal that came up in Stoke-on-Trent, and he bought an office building, and he was doing a commercial to residential conversion, and he needed the money straight away. He couldn't wait 6 months for it to be refinanced. He bought the house for 40,000. I think he spent about 30,000 on the renovation, so owed him £70,000. We agreed a deal with him at 95,000 on the basis that it was producing 20,800. I knew it was producing 20,800 because my agency was managing it. We sold the deal that afternoon for 108,000 to one of our investors that already owned properties in the area. And that only took one day, believe it or not, because I made a call, they viewed it, they loved the thought of it producing that much income. And for £108,000, they've made themselves a decent amount of cash flow, and we still continue to manage it. So it's a win-win-win. The vendor won, I won, the investor won, and my agency won. So it's a win-win-win-win. So you've got to work on the basis that you've got to be able to take a bite of the cherry as many times as possible to generate your cash flow. And we do these every day of the week. And this is what I love about deal sourcing. There's deals absolutely everywhere. It's now, one thing that really struck a chord with me. Now, unfortunately, I've got this tendency of driving fast, and I've been on a few speed awareness courses. I think they know me by first name by now. And so the one thing that the guy said to me, he goes that when you're driving, you look at two things. Well, you've got two ways of looking at things in life. You've got tunnel vision, which means that you just look straight at you. Or you can look at funnel vision, which means that you're then aware of everything to the left and right of you, so that you can pretty much see exactly what's going on. And as you're practicing this now on the webinar, just imagine that you're looking straight at your screen. You can only see your screen. That's tunnel vision. Now open your sight out to what's happening to the left and right of you. What have you got going on? Is your wife to the left-hand side watching TV? Have you got some kids running to the right of you? And you start to become a lot more observative. And more importantly, you get to see exactly what's going on around you. More importantly, you get to see exactly all the deals that's happening around you. You've got to become a lot more observative. Observative, is that even a word? Observative? Yeah, okay, we'll run with it. So we get, last year I traded and I sourced well in excess of 100 properties. I think that actual fact, I think it was around 134 properties that we did in 2015. And the average fee size was anywhere between 5 and 10 grand. Now you do that calculation. Did I make some money last year? More importantly, you got to remember that the sourcing side is only one side of my business. Take that into consideration with my portfolio of 500 tenants. Take that into consideration with my rent-to-rent portfolio. Take that into consideration with my development company. Take that into consideration with my letting agency. Am I making money? So you've got to take this into consideration. So, but why would people buy these deals from me? Purely because, yes, mate.
Can I jump on and go through? I'm just wary that we spent a lot of time there, and we've still got some stuff to cover. So let me jump on and I'll get this moving again.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so here's another big question we get asked. Why would people buy the deals? Who are the people that buy them, and what's the basis behind it? So this is from my experience. These are the people that buy them. Number one, it's investors. So it can be property investors, it can be corporate investors, anyone that's in the finance market. So it can be anyone from, as I said, it could be a doctor, a solicitor, an accountant, anybody. It's usually professional people, but at the same time you get a lot of tradesmen that want to buy properties as well, and they'll buy the deals from you. Next one, banks and the interest rates. Why are people investing in property now? Well, if you look at the interest rates on offer, they are pitiful. They're just so low. You'll never make any money from putting your money in the bank. And people are catching on to this now, so they want to invest their money into property where they can get 6, 8, 10, 12% return on investment per year, which is a very good return. And there's the question, what is a good ROI? ROI, again, return on investment. If you ask most people that are just your average everyday people, Mr. Jones down the road, he'll say a good return is around 5%. If you said you could get him 10%, he'd fall off his chair and say, what's the catch? 10%. And here we are talking about rent to rent, 1,000% return over 3 years. If you said that to Mr. Jones down the road, it's outside of his realm of reality of what's possible. You could sit there all day with him and he still wouldn't believe it. So that's what you've got to think about. There's no point going to the average man or lady and saying to them, I can get you 300% return, because they're not interested. All they want is usually somewhere between a 6 and 10% return, and they are happy. So they're the people that you're going to deal with. Okay, don't try and think outside the box on this. Keep it really simple. Man down the road, in a job, 6 to 10% return, that's what he wants. So all you've got to do is source those deals, deliver that to the market. The people who are the most successful merchants and businesses, all they do is they find out what the market wants and they deliver a service to them. And that's all I do in my businesses as well. I made the mistake of trying to create things that there wasn't a need for many years ago. And then the last one is a pension pot. People now are starting to catch on to the fact that pensions have gone downhill. What you thought you might get when you retire is no longer there. It's been spent, it wasn't invested well, and everything else that goes with it. So people are investing in a property, so that's their pension pot for when they retire. And that's certainly the case with me and Arsh. Next slide, Arsh. So what now then? How do I make a business out of all of this, the deal sourcing aspect? Well, it's really simple. So if you've got your pen and paper, you need to write these things down. Number one, you need to understand the legals, and you need to get all the contracts. Now, Arsh and I have got the best part of a dozen contracts, because you'll never walk into the same situation every time. Sometimes it might be a simple transaction, might be a buy, a sell, it could be a joint venture, it could be a development joint venture, it could be a title split, it could be a whole host of things. Now, how do you know how to deal with all of that? Well, that's where the training comes in. It would take us, that's why we run it over weekends and things, because it takes a long time to explain all these different aspects to you. Whereas a normal letting agent or estate agent will walk into a house, all they're thinking is sell. How can I sell this? And a lot of times they'll walk in and they think there's nothing I can do here. There's too much owed on the mortgage, or they want too much for it versus what it's worth. And I love letting agents because they walk out of all these deals that then we can walk into as sources and make money on it. So you've got to understand the legals, you've got to have all the right contracts, and we give you all the contracts. Next is research. You've got to really know your market. You've got to know your target area, your gold mine area, like the back of your hand. Number three is building a business presence, and Arsh and I will show you a couple of slides in a second of what we built. Number four, getting the leads. So I've showed you a couple of examples, but they were more for rent to rent. Deal sourcing for sales and investments is very different. So there's a huge mind map that you'll get as well, which shows you all the marketing and advertising. Next is an investor database. Now, I know Arsh was going to mention this, but we've only got sort of 12 minutes left on the webinar, so I think we're short on time on that. And then making the sale. How do you actually make that sale and package it together? Next slide, Arsh. So these are pictures of a couple of my companies. I've actually just sold Easy Property Sales now. You can see the two cars there that were wrapped, and they were really my sourcing company. But because I'm focusing more on the forward-thinking property now. So what will happen, and this will be the same with you, you'll gradually move. You'll start in one area and you'll evolve into other things that are more cost-effective for you. So what I focus a lot on now is sourcing investment properties. So the forward-thinking property company is actually packaging these investment deals and selling those on. So next slide is Arsh. And Arsh, just very quickly, just in 1 minute, just tell everybody about what you built there.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, in year 2000, I decided that when I was going to go out into property, I was going to go out to mass market. And I thought, well, what separates me from everyone else in the paper that Neil showed you earlier on, advertising the back of the paper? And the fact that is that I can say to people, why don't you come and sit with me in my office where I can talk to you about your property needs and see how we can structure a deal. I can't disappear overnight. A man on a mobile phone and a one-man band can. Now, I'm saying that hopefully all you guys should aspire to get to this level of competence or professionalism where you'll have a high street presence. Okay, Neil?
Yep.
Sorry, mate. I'll just say a couple of people say sound's gone. We're back on?
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Let's go to the next slide and I'll... Okay, so the next thing, again, this is the question that comes up. This all sounds easy enough, but where can I actually learn how to package it up and do the different strategies and all the legals and the contracts and the finance? How do I learn all that? And that's really what we want to help you with, all of that. It's so as I said earlier, how would you like to align yourself with us and actually joint venture with us? So that's an opportunity that we're going to open up now. If we go to the next slide. So the next training we're going to be running is over the 13th and 14th of February, and that's primarily deal sourcing. So it's over 2 days. The first day is really on what we're talking about now, finding those strategies, knowing what to look for when you're in a situation where everybody else doesn't know a solution to it. We show you all of that. And then the second day is really on the systemization. So it's actually building the business, it's building all of the systems, you're systemizing everything, you're learning how to build a business that runs without you, or I wouldn't say runs without you, but you're not spending 18-hour days in that business every day. The systems are taking away 12 of those hours from you, so you might only spend a few hours within the business each day. So what we say in terms of the joint venture is, this really is a win-win situation for all of us. So for Arsh, he will actually sell those deals for you. I'll assist in the negotiations, and really your job is to source those deals wherever you are in the UK. And it's really a three-way partnership. So that's the joint venture opportunity we offer with the deal sourcing. We've already got a lot of partners, and it works really well for everybody involved. Next slide. Right, Arsh, I'll let you just cover these points on what we actually cover.
Okay, so this is the deal sourcing course that we'll be running on the 13th and 14th. The rent-to-rent course is being held on the 30th and 31st of Jan. The deal source is on the 13th and 14th of Feb. So on the Saturday the 13th, we'll be looking at legals, how to use the right contracts, such as the sales contracts, exclusivity, NDA agreements, option agreements, and much, much more. How to find and build an investor database. Now, the investor database is key because obviously finding the deals is one thing. Having a database who is going to be able to purchase them off you is a completely different one. I could talk to you easily for another 2 hours about how to build an investor database, and you can actually do it. I'll tell you what, here's your first tip. Spare Room, Gumtree. They're two easy portals that you can build an investor database for free. All the people advertising on those are people who are advertising properties either to let. If they've got a property to let, that means they're an investor. Are they now looking for more stock? Potentially, but without negotiating or without contacting them, schmoozing them and communicating with them, how would you ever know? So they're two key. I've got building a database. Since the start of year 2000, I've built a database of 45,000 investors nationwide. So would you say that for every deal that I get, I'm going to be able to meet someone's need? There's actually someone on this webinar tonight who I've actually just done pretty much a JV with. They came to me with a property that they wanted to sell. They had it on the market for the best part of 12 months and they couldn't sell it. I sold it within 2 days. So because, believe it or not, when it's listed with an estate agent, they can only actually market to their local investors. Or when I say market it, when they put a little sign out in front of their window, only the people in Stockton is ever going to see that property. Now, when I put it out to my database, I'm putting it out to an investor database that is not only national, but potentially international. I've got guys in Saudi who have got a lot of money and looking to buy a lot of property in the UK. Now, all I'm doing is supplying their need. But I'll be teaching about how to build that investor database. More importantly, as a result of coming on the deal sourcing course, you get to JV with me, which means that you get to use my database, which means that when you source a deal, I will put it out to my database for you, which saves you a lot of work. We'll be talking about how to work with estate agents and have them actually feed you the deals before they actually go to the market. How to work with commercial agents who can do the same, but more importantly, how to keep some of the deals for yourself with no money down. We'll be looking on day 2 on the 14th of Feb. I appreciate it's Valentine's Day, but we're going to show a lot of love this day, so don't worry about your wife or your partner. How to build a business, how to build your website. Now, my business, We Buy Properties Fast, we generate a lot of leads every month. I want to show you exactly how to do the same. How to create a highly responsive video to get leads. How to build up social media presence. How to build your team. Talking about the tradespeople. The tradespeople is going to bring in a lot of leads for you, as we showed you for the rent to rent. It's exactly the same for the deal sourcing. Building your team, recruiting the right staff and the structures. But more importantly, the systemization. How do you systemize it to a point where you no longer become part of the business and it runs itself? So we'll also be looking at stuff like tax planning. We've got a tax specialist, Simon Masievich, who comes and does a talk. We try and get a legal team in who comes and talks to you about the legal aspect, about the contracts that we have in place, talking about profit and loss, talking about how to set up a virtual office. So you don't need an office like mine, but people still perceive you as being a lot bigger than what you actually are. How to use your trade connections and how to improve how to actually create an exit plan, because no one wants to run a business for the rest of their life. You don't want to create yourself another job, but what you do want to do, you want to create something that's going to be worth some money in the future. And so what we'll be talking about is how to create that exit plan from day one, as setting it out as you mean to go on. But more importantly, you get to spend 2 days with myself and Neil, which I'm hoping that you find of great use. Now, the 13th and 14th is the deal sourcing. Now, here's what we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at the contracts, we'll be looking at the legal documents, we'll be looking at the documents that you get, you'll be looking at the membership to our support group. When you come on a course with us, it's not just a case of, okay, you've been on a course, now go off and crack on and get on and do it. In actual fact, we add you into our Facebook group, which is a dedicated group specifically for course attendees, similar to the guys that you've seen on the testimonials earlier, and you'll even get to speak to JC and Mena. And the learning continues day to day. People go in there every day and ask questions. Me and Neil log in there every day and answer the questions. More importantly, you get a one-on-one call with Neil after the course, as well as the lifetime support with us, as well as the JV opportunity. So the rent-to-rent package, again, you'll get all the management agreements, you'll get the key to success, you'll get the membership, as well as a one-to-one call with Neil. Now, here's what we're doing. It's something completely special. Remember,
Arsh?
yes.
Arsh?
Yeah.
I think you just skipped over the everything there. Just go back a slide so people can read actually what they get on the day.
Okay. So we've talked about.
This is a little bit different. Yeah, it's different from the deal sourcing.
The key to it will be the template letters, the legal documents. Now, all the letters that we write out to our landlords, you're going to get templates of them. Remember, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. Now, we've had so many people that have tried to write their own letter and they've found that they haven't had the success rate. But when they go back to the original documents that we supply them with, they start to get the success rate. They start to get the phone ringing. They start to book meetings with the landlords. You get the key to success, which has got all the documents on, as well as the lifetime support, as well as the one-on-one call with Neil, and the membership in the group. Now, we've got limited seats available on both courses. So the rent-to-rent, again, is at the end of Jan, and the deal sourcing is in the middle of Feb. Because this is one of the most in-demand property courses in the UK, we don't run these every month. We only run them a couple of times a year. So remember what you said about 2016? How can this be your year? I'm giving you the opportunity to learn some fantastic skills, which has made me and Neil a lot of money. More importantly, I'm putting you in contact with a lot of people who will also be able to show you a testament how they've gone off and done it as well. So regardless of whether you're completely new to property or whether you're a seasoned investor, there is so much here for you. I'm not going to talk about any of the other courses because some of the other courses, they teach you for £700 plus for one day. I'm not interested in those, if I'm honest. Now, tonight, I'm going to do a 2016 start of year special, which means that it's only for tonight. Come midnight tonight, if you contact me after midnight tonight, the offer will no longer be available. So you can book on anything that I'm going to show you now off my website, arshellahi.com/events. Now, you can book on the rent-to-rent course or the deal sourcing course at $995 for a weekend. So that's either the rent-to-rent or the deal sourcing course at $995. And I'm going to allow you to bring a guest for free. So that's $995 for two people for one course. So that's either the rent-to-rent or the deal sourcing. Now, someone's just said that I can't make any of the dates. Are you running them in March? Unfortunately, we're not running them in March. The one thing that you can do, if you can't attend in person, the one thing that we do, we actually live stream them as well. So as you're watching this tonight on your computer at home, you can actually live stream the event from the comfort of your own home, and you'll be watching us in person because we actually add video to it as well. So that may be something that you might want to take into consideration if you can't get there in person. And we also give you, as well as all the other course attendees, the audio clip to listen back to throughout the duration of, and we put that in a form of a Dropbox so that you can listen back to whenever you need to, or even just a refresher. So we reckon that the return on investment you'll get back in 6 weeks. Neil, do you just want to talk about the ROI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for $995, if you think about it, if you've got a rent-to-rent deal that's making you, say £700 a month, which is pretty typical, that will give you 100% of your return back within just 6 weeks. As an example, that'd be £1,050 within 6 weeks. Deal sourcing, a 300% ROI on your first deal is typical. If you make, let's say, £3,000 on your first deal, you're going to get 3 times your investment back. Now the beauty of that is you're not just going to do one deal. Imagine if you're making, let's do a really small example. Let's say you've got a house that's only cash flowing £600 a month. That would give you £7,200 per year. Now let's say you just had one house. You know that's not enough to retire on, $7,000 a year. But what if you had 10 of those? You're now earning $72,000 a year. 20 of those houses, £144,000 a year. So when you compare that to a $995 investment, and that's for you and a guest. So over 2 days, it works out £248 each per day, which is so low cost, it's ridiculous. For the returns that you can get from this, it's incredible, really.
Okay, so someone's put that location is actually in Dudley in the West Midlands. The reason why we do that, every time we run a course in London, the people in the north say that they can't get there. Every time we run a course in the north, people in the south say they can't get there. So we run it very central. We run it in the West Midlands, in Dudley. And there's the 2 course dates. So again, tonight, the 30th and 31st of Jan is a rent-to-rent weekend, which you can have for $995, plus bring a partner for free. Or you can come on the deal sourcing course on the 13th and 14th of Feb for $995, and again bring a partner for free. Someone said to me earlier, it says that if we want to come on both, what can we do? So we've managed to bring down the price ever so slightly so that you can come on all 4 days for $17.95. But if this is of interest, we can't book this off the website because I haven't been able to do the discount on my website. So the best thing to do, if that's of interest, send me a message literally straight away and I can arrange for that to happen for you this evening. Again, I'll put the link up again. Someone's just asked for the link. So that's the link. So it's arshelahi.com/events. What I am going to do, I'm going to spend a few minutes. I know we're running over on time. If you want to ask any questions, now's your time. Whilst people are looking at the event link. So, quickly going through. Just say, okay. I'm just going to quickly. So quite a few questions for JC that we didn't get around to answering, but I'm hoping that he's going to be with us on the 30th and 31st. So, okay. So here's a question from Rob. It says, Neil mentioned earlier about direct mail to owners when sourcing rent-to-rent properties. Please clarify whether the properties that you look out for are to assess are for sale or for rent or for both.
Yeah, okay, good question. Now, I target properties that are for rent only. However, if I wasn't doing well from my marketing sourcing, I would also target those for sale. Now, the challenge when they're for sale is that, in fact, let me flip this. When it's for rent, you know that everybody's interested. If a property is for rent, you know they want to rent that property. So your ratio is 100% that you know they want to rent that property. If it's a property that's for sale, your ratio is a lot lower. You don't know how many of those properties, and I'll give you an example. I've just moved house, moved into a bigger house. I wouldn't have rented out my previous house because I wanted the money in order to put into this house. So if that makes sense. So you'll come across people like that who they won't be able to rent their previous house because they'll need to sell it in order to buy a bigger house.
Okay. Right, okay. Let's just have a quick look. Just quickly going through some of the questions. Okay, so a couple of people have asked about a payment plan. We've got 4 weeks up until the end of January course, or we've got 6 weeks up until the end of up until the deal sourcing course. Now, what we can do, if you want, I'm going to send. You can, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to put my mobile number. You can send me a text message either tonight. I'll probably call you tomorrow, if I'm honest, because it is quite late on, and we can arrange a payment plan so that if there's 6 weeks and it's 995, we can arrange a payment of £200 plus £100 every week going up, or we can do 3 chunks of 300. So we can work a payment plan out. So if that's of interest, please keep an eye out for my mobile number. I'm just having a quick look at questions wise, guys. You guys are very light on your questions. I've got to give you that. Right. Does all your rent to rent paperwork work in Scotland? Rent to rent, Neil?
Yeah.
Are you still with me?
Yeah, we had this before. I can't remember that lady's name who came on the course, but she flew down from Edinburgh, and she said, what did she say? She said she had to change one thing on there. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was something like this contract is fully legal in England and Wales, and she had to change it to Scotland. So yeah, it's fine. Now the thing to remember is this. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this as well, don't understand how contracts and legal things work. And I say I'm guilty. I used to be guilty of this. I used to think the law and contracts and things were really complicated, and you had to be a solicitor and all of this. And then I listened to a talk one day from some musicians, and they said that the way they got signed up to their record label was they were in a cafe and they wrote it on a white tablecloth, and they all signed it and they wrote some bits on, and it was a legally binding contract. And I thought, that can't be right. So I really looked into it, and I found out that anything is a legally binding contract is basically what you say it is. So the contracts we have and all the management agreements, they're not from any official government body. They are literally what we wanted in a contract. A solicitor has written it up in legal jargon, and was also keeping it simple enough so the landlord understands. And then it's agreement between the landlord and us. So that's a long way of answering your question there, but yeah, it is legal anywhere, because it is literally a contract that's made between us and the landlord. So it can be used in anywhere in the world, really.
Okay, brilliant. Right, Neil, I'm just going to pull up here, mate. Let me just see what other questions we've got here. Okay, so let's have a quick look. So questions, I'm quickly going through some of the questions now, but more importantly, you're going to have Neil's mobile number here, and also anything to do with the course will have to come through to myself, and I'll give you my personal mobile number, which is going to be listed now. So you can come through to me off my website and send me an email, or you can send me an email, arsh@arshellahi.com, or you can text me or call me on my mobile number, 07967 016 425. Okay, now one person just put, how do we pay? Because on the website it says $595 a day. Now I'm just going to quickly show, I'm on my website at the moment. Now if you go to the events, you go to the Neil Ward R2R special offer. And there we go, it says $995 for the weekend course. And you press at the bottom there, you can either buy the individual days for $595 each. You can buy the whole weekend for $995, and you press add to cart. So hopefully that, again, I'll just quickly go through that because a couple of people have asked. So if you're on the home screen, which should hopefully look like, if you're on the home screen of my website, which will look like that, you go to the events page, you go to Neil Ward R2R special offer. Then on the right hand side, if you go to the bottom of the page, it says book the whole weekend for $995. You press add to cart, and it really is as simple as that. So someone's asked just for Neil's mobile number, because Neil really likes it if you call him approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, preferably drunk. Neil, that's your preference, isn't it?
Oh yes, definitely.
And if you can share your fine love for him, that would be fantastic. But yeah, I think, let's have a quick look. I'm just quickly going through. If I only go for one day of the 2-day course, which day would I pick of the 2-day courses? Right. Now, Jane's asked, well, if I was going to pick one day of the 2-day courses, which one do I pick? Now, the question you've got to ask yourself is, where do you see your strength? If you think you're a strong negotiator, do you need to come on the negotiator course? Personally, I would still say yes, because I guarantee there'll be things that we pick up on that you wouldn't have thought of. First thing that you need to do is that if you want to identify rent-to-rent opportunities, you need to come on the Saturday. If you're looking for negotiation tactics, you need to come on the Sunday. That's on the rent-to-rent course. On the deal sourcing course, on the Saturday, we talk predominantly about about deal sourcing, how to structure it, how to advertise, where to advertise. Sunday is predominantly about setting up the business, the tax, the profit and loss, and the accountancy, and the business structure. So you decide on what days. Personally, I would take advantage of the offer, but that's completely up to you.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that, actually. I was just thinking, what would I do, in my own head there. As Arsh said, rent-to-rent day one, it's pure rent-to-rent strategy. It shows you in so much detail that you just cannot make a mistake, which is what happens to most of the people. They make all these mistakes and they lose a lot of money. The way we train it, you get so much information, and you do it all within the course, so you don't go away and do it later on. So it's all done there and then, it's all checked for you. So we're putting our necks on the line and saying, yes, that is a good area, etc., and that helping you with it. You need that. The second day, the negotiations training, I I'd say it's paramount. Corporate training is 2,700, per day. So you can't get this training anywhere else really that I've taught. I mean, I even train this to sales trainers. So to get this level of negotiations that's so advanced, but at the same time taught in such a simple way, you can't really get that elsewhere, and you'll use that for the rest of your life. And then it comes on to the business, so the deal sourcing, and again it goes hand in hand. What if you walk in and the rent deal is not right? Maybe they want to sell instead, or you see another option. If you don't know how to do the sourcing, what are you going to do with that? So, I'd say that's paramount, and knowing how to structure it, knowing, how to be creative with a deal. And then you have the business day. Well, it doesn't matter what you do for the rest of your life. If you're going to be either an entrepreneur, self-employed, a business owner, or just build your own portfolio, you need to understand how to systemize. You need to understand finance. You've got to understand money, how to create cash flow forecasts, profit and loss accounts, how to raise money, how to, do you find all your taxes, how to save money on taxes. I didn't pay a penny in taxes this year, which, you'd think, how is that possible with the amount that you earned? And it's knowing all the legal way to structure everything correctly. Because I guarantee if you were to look at your pay statement or whatever you've earned this year, there'll be some tax there you've got to pay. The government in this country is very nice to business owners, and it's not nice to people who are employed. Actually, if you're an employee, you pay more tax than anybody else, whereas businesses pay very little tax. So you've just got to look at all these things. How far do you want to go with your education? Do you want to become, maybe you don't want to become millionaires, but some of you might want to do, and you've got to get this education. I'd say if you want to be a millionaire, you've got to learn from millionaires, and I've always been taught that. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question a little bit better.
Okay, interesting. So I suppose that kind of brings us to a close. We're a little bit later than anticipated, but I'm hoping that we've answered the majority of the questions. Again, a couple of guys are saying, just if we can quickly recap on where to go on the website, and I will make this clearer in future if I'm honest. So if you go to my homepage, which is arshellahi.com, and then go to the events, go to the Neil Ward R2R special offer. That's for the rent to rent. Then you go to the bottom of the page there, and you do book the whole weekend for $995. But if you want to come on the deal sourcing course, you go to events, deal sourcing, and again it's $595 per day. And if you go to the bottom, book the whole weekend for $995. And that takes you exactly where it is. The cost of the live streaming is exactly the same as coming on the course. The reason why we do that is purely because you get exactly the same content, you get exactly the same material, because we send it you prior to the event. So hopefully that's of interest to you. By all means, if you have got any queries, I'm going to log off in a second. I'll probably have about an opportunity slot of about 10 minutes if you want to have a chat, and you can call me on my mobile, which is, and I'll just quickly get it back up at the end, which is just there. So if you want to have a chat, or if you need some further clarification, give me a call on that number and we'll have a chat. But on that note, I'd like to thank you all very much for your time. Just bearing in mind that the offer does end at midnight tonight. After tonight, we will be putting it back to $995 per person. And if you are watching this webinar off somewhere like YouTube, etc., the offer is only valid for the date of the 3rd of January 2016. So I'd like to thank you all very much for your time, and hopefully we will see you at either at the end of Jan or the middle of Feb. Take care. Have a lovely evening. Neil, would you like to sign off?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ash.
Right.
It was a real pleasure to be on the webinar as well, and hopefully some of the stuff that I've taught you tonight, you can make a difference to your life and your family's life, or whatever it is you want to create in your future. And I'd love to help you to get even further along. So I look forward to meeting some of you in the future. So thank you.
Okay, take care. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.